Hello again, and thanks for joining our weekly vulnerability analysis from the Virsec Security Lab. We are here in mid-January by now, and it continues to be incredibly busy with new vulnerabilities. Joined as always by Satya Gupta, our founder and CTO. Hello, Satya.
Hi, good morning, Willie. How are you?
So another busy few weeks. I know there was a flurry of things over the holidays. What are we seeing in terms of raw numbers in the last week?
Let me share my screen here with you.
Great.
So we have a total of 315 new vulnerabilities for that period of January 4th to January 10th. And so in this, I've picked out 6 high-impact vulnerabilities because there's, there's either they are very high velocity, they're very highly used applications, or end up having a very deep impact on somebody's security. Or they're a confused deputy. So the ones that I picked up today are these 6 that you see here right here on the screen.
Okay, great. So let's jump right into it. So tell me, Liferay is a CMS product, I guess a portal used for collaboration by a lot of companies, and I know we've worked with some very large companies using it. Tell us about what's going on here.
Basically, as you rightly mentioned, the CMS, content management system is a very easy way for non-technical users to pull information together and store and organize and share information. It's used extensively by support teams, and where you kind of slap in a whole bunch of documents from here, or various types of information that come in and have to be presented to customers. So we've seen a whole lot being used in support portals. And CMS portal version 7.1.3 and 7.2.1 have this cross-site scripting vulnerability in it. As you can see here, it's very fresh, hot off the press, and it doesn't even have a CVSS score from NVD, but we've actually scored it based on our own, our own threat risk matrix. At 91%.
And this was next to as high as it goes. 9 out of 10 categories are bright red.
Exactly. And what makes it worse is that even though there's not a very definite, explicit exploit available out there, but they've disclosed some really critical information, as you can see here: username, last name, surname, fields, and where to attack and all. So it all but brings you to the brink of the attack without really publishing specific information. But anybody who's got the mindset will actually be able to build this attack very easily. And that brings me to this information that we can see here with the built with. There's Liferay has been deployed on 54,000 websites, so it's got a large footprint.
Right, and if it's easy to construct a vulnerability, that's really just as bad as a published exploit.
Exactly, right.
Maybe worse.
And because it's a cross-site scripting vulnerability that can actually hurt the end users, it's even worse because the last thing a corporation wants to do is to be facilitating attacks on their own users. So this makes cross-site scripting vulnerabilities really bad because they end up hurting your own users and all. So, this is the good news here, that VSP Web, our security platform, VSP Web, can actually protect against cross-site scripting vulnerabilities hitting the enterprise user. So, it's a really good shoe-in into protecting against this particular attack.
Great, and I understand your team is building a demonstration of this, so we'll try to make that available next week.
Yes, we will. It'll be posted on the website for sure. The next attack I want to talk about is on a company called Proofpoint. They have a threat management server which kind of publishes the indicators of compromise for various types of attack scenarios. So it basically protects against insiders having information, how to attack as an insider essentially. So it basically also detects risky behavior, based on its database. But this particular vulnerability allows the attacker to run arbitrary code with the local administrator privileges on the endpoint. Now, this is again a case of fox guarding the hen house. If I were, as an attacker, if I could come in and I could subvert the threat management server, then there will be nothing to compare against anymore. So, behavior from an attacker that borders on the, on the very risky behavior.
So kind of another form of confused deputy, maybe not say
Exactly.
turning off a VPN or something, but if you're corrupting or turning off the tracking of attacks, that's certainly valuable to an attacker.
Yes, and another thing to note here, Willie, is that with any of these products that require a database, and this is one of those things that actually uses and leverages a database. If you kind of corrupt the database, then they're as good as their database is. So if the database has bad stuff in it, useless stuff in it, then the detection is reduced to nothing pretty much.
Sure.
And this particular vulnerability was rated at a score of 9.8 by the National Vulnerability Database. And it has not been disclosed who the attackers were, but this is again, this is one of those vulnerabilities where the data, there's sufficiently large amount of data available. So an attacker could, even if you don't have a publicly available exploit, it could be constructed with fair amount of ease, essentially.
And Proofpoint has been around for many years and widely deployed.
Absolutely, it's a very widely deployed piece of software. So fortunately, once again, the Virsec Security Platform, our VSP host, has the capability of protecting, against these kind of attacks. Any remote code execution attack would get protected by Virsec, the security platform, and we'd prevent any malicious code from ever running on your endpoint.
Okay.
My next pick is a Node.js server. Node.js is, as you know, is a very popular, hosting platform. It's an event-driven server which, consumes JavaScript. So, it's a very popular server because it allows, to have a very quick, development cycle. So you
We've seen maybe half a dozen different vulnerabilities we've analyzed on Node.js, haven't we?
Absolutely, and
there's
there's
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So the one that we saw earlier, really, were on packages, that are sort of add-ons, I should say, on top of Node.js. But this one is in the Node.js protocol itself. So that even if, let's say, there's some hope that you may not be using that particular npm that is vulnerable, but with this, every Node.js server becomes vulnerable in one fell swoop, essentially.
Okay.
So this particular vulnerability has a score of 6.5, but the idea here is that you can send an HTTP request inside another HTTP request. So you're embedding a parasite HTTP request. Typically, most portals will use the first HTTP request to make some decisions and convey it back to the user. But because it's a stateless machine, so the second HTTP request that's buried inside the first one looks like, for all practical purposes, it looks like that was the response that that the user gave in respect to the first one. So it kind of allows the user to do nasty thing like gain authorized access to sensitive data, and also corrupt the data that's that is present in the databases, essentially. So anything that an HTTP request could do, would validly, can be done by this smuggled HTTP second request that's smuggled, that's embedded inside the first one. Okay. And even worse piece of news is that there's a public domain exploit available, so that makes it really a real problem. But the real problem, I see here is that Node.js is used, by very large companies like Netflix, Walmart, Uber, PayPal, LinkedIn, very large organizations that have very large footprints and all. So, that makes it even worse because, now all of a sudden everybody has to go and quickly patch their servers and all. This is the kind of thing that causes churn. If you don't patch it, the attackers are coming. If you patch it, then you have to go through all of this churn. So fortunately,
sure. Yeah, we've talked about that many times. These sort of patching fire drills are disruptive and often, almost always cause unintended consequences.
Exactly. But fortunately, the Virsec security platform will protect against these kind of attacks. So, I like to think of it as being a compensating control against, so you can schedule your patch essentially, right? So you don't have to go do it right there in a hurry and all, essentially.
Right.
So my next vulnerability that I picked here is, don't get fooled by the name out here, the Spring Boot actuator. It's actually a piece of code that is used to build microservices. And these Spring Boot actuator is one of these, it's a sub-project of the Spring Boot, and it adds monitoring and management support to your applications. And the logs that it writes, those log files have a path traversal vulnerability, so it doesn't check for the file name. So you could actually refer to some file name which is outside the web root, so you can gain access to critical files or information that's buried inside critical files and all, essentially. So it exposes your code essentially to unnecessarily to attackers and all. But there's a fortunately, again, we have the Virsec security platform will block these directory traversal kind of attacks deterministically. So we will be able to protect end users against this kind of an attack.
Okay.
My next one,
we have an IBM Cloud product package.
Yes. So IBM Cloud Pack, this basically, it is what the Cloud Pack does is it's a AI powered, we all have heard about the Watson computer that IBM keeps talking about, right? So it basically this it helps. This Cloud Pack is basically like a package that allows you to implement some workflows, intelligent workflows in your business to accelerate, any kind of digital transformation project that you might be working on. And so it uses at the back end, it uses the IBM Watson to apply these predictions to, the AI, AI-based predictions to your data, essentially. So it is used by very large corporations to predict, to do some business intelligence activity, essentially. And this particular vulnerability is a CSRF vulnerability, cross-site request forgery. So, basically the idea is that the IBM Cloud Pack server will trust data from, from a trusted user and then just simply act on it. So if the trusted user, were to sort of start abusing it, it could be, they would be able to gain privileged access onto the server on which the Cloud Pack is running, and then you'd be able to execute arbitrary code, essentially.
So, sure, and regardless of what this actual tool is intended to do, it could be a launching point for the kill chain in a broader attack.
Exactly. Right? Anytime a bad guy a bad actor can execute code on your machine, it'll have the same effect that the SolarWinds attack did. If I can execute, if I facilitate, by distributing code that has RC type of vulnerabilities, you're putting your customers at risk as well.
Sure. Okay.
So the good news here is that VSP Web can protect against these CSRF attacks. So if this particular app server were to be protected by the VSP Web capability, it would we'd absolutely not have to worry about being attacked here, even though the Cloud Pack was vulnerable.
Okay, so now we're to our last one is our weekly confused deputy. And this is with a Sonic Wall VPN. I think we've also seen Sonic Wall on our rogues gallery before.
Yes, we do. So Sonic Wall is a VPN product. This particular model, it serves small businesses up to 250 users can use this product to log in and work within the VPN confines. This particular release has its release 10.2.0 that we see here. It has it's not been rated yet, but it is by NVD, so there's no score associated with it. But as you can see, the attacker has the ability to run OS commands essentially on that particular server, on the VPN server. So again, it's an RCE, and as we all know, RCEs can be devastating. It allows makes the entire server, anything that's sitting out there on the server becomes, its integrity can get totally compromised. So this particular vulnerability doesn't have a publicly disclosed exploit, and they don't go about explaining exactly where the vulnerability existed. So it'll be a little bit harder, but it can be done. I mean, there are tools like our own web simulator where we hammer every URL that we see out there. So it's a little bit of a brute force approach, but this can be attacked very quickly. So given the fact that it is a security product, I would urge people to sort of either deploy the patch or to protect it with the VSP, Virsec Security Platform. And we do, as we all remember, we do a very good job with the OS command injection. It's a VSP web module will do absolutely protect you from that.
All right, Satya, great summary again. And I'll remind the audience that we have a lot of material available. We're doing these every week. We're posting these as blogs. You can download the full report every week. And of course, SolarWinds saga continues. We've done a number of additional webinars, and we talked about remote code execution here with a couple examples, and that's certainly an emerging theme with SolarWinds, as well as the whole tampering with the supply chain for thousands of customers. Yeah. But again, thank you, Satya, and we will talk to you again next week.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.